Hey everyone, this is Saro Lynch-Thomason. If you like learning folk songs or enjoy history or folklore, then I recommend that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. This episode is sponsored in part by a grant from the Country Dance and Song Society, or CDSS. CDSS supports people in building and sustaining vibrant communities through participatory dance, music, and song. You can find out more at cdss.org. In this episode, I'll be teaching you some hollers from the Piedmont of North Carolina. If you want to learn more about the history and uses of hollering, then check out my companion video tagged here and linked in the notes below. Imagine standing in a field in the rural North Carolina Piedmont about 100 years ago. It's early morning. There's dew clinging to the grass. The air is cool and wet. Maybe you hear insects chirping or birds making their morning calls. One thing you'd definitely be hearing is hollers. Lots and lots of hollers. Hollering has been a part of rural American vocal traditions for hundreds of years. These calls and cries have been a way to communicate with animals and people over long distances, a very practical skill when working with livestock or when people live far apart from one another. As you'll learn if you watch my companion video, Sampson County, North Carolina is one place where hollers continue to be used frequently well into the 20th century. So today, we're going to learn a few hollers from Sampson County. I'll be teaching these hollers in a simple holler and repeat style. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a tip. Don't be afraid to be loud. Hollers are meant to be heard by family and neighbors. It's how hollering works. Here's a simple, functional holler shared by Sampson County resident Paula Brown. Paula said that this holler would be used by her grandmother to call people in from the field for supper. All right, I'm going to break that down into two parts. Our first part, spoken out loud, would sound like ooh wee ooh. Let's try it together. Ooh wee ooh. Okay, our second part, spoken out loud, would sound like oh you wee ooh. Okay, let's try it. Oh you wee. Now let's put the first and second part together for our complete come to supper holler. Ooh, wee, ooh. Ooh, you, wee, ooh. Next, let's learn a distress holler. This is a holler that you would use to let folks nearby know that you were having an emergency and that you needed help. This call is like a siren. It starts low in your vocal range, slides up, and then slides back down again. Here's how it sounds. Ooh. Try that with me. Ooh. Now, normally, if you were calling for help, you would need to call for a while to make sure that your neighbors could hear you. So you would be repeating that siren sound over and over and over. So let's repeat it together. So now that we've learned a functional holler, a holler to call people in for supper, and a distress holler, a holler to communicate that you're having an emergency, let's learn a communication holler, a holler to help people communicate messages to each other. This is a holler shared by Sampson County resident Leonard Emanuel. He described the holler as a way to help two people find each other. For example, if two people had agreed to meet each other at the river at 9 a.m. and one person arrived first, they would shout out this holler and see if the other person hollered back. Eh-eh-oo, eh-oo, eh-oo. Try doing that with me. Eh-eh-oo, eh-oo, eh-oo. Now you might be hearing a kind of flip in my voice. That's called a vocal break. And if you don't feel like you can do that yet, that's okay. We're going to talk more about vocal breaks in a second. Now, if the person who hadn't arrived at that spot yet heard that ee holler, they would respond with this holler to let their friend know that they were nearby. Let's try that together. So let's talk for a second about vocal breaks, because they can happen a lot in certain types of hollering and especially in yodeling. Vocal breaks are a popping or flipping noise that happens as we move from our chest voice to our head voice and vice versa. Those are examples of vocal breaks. Vocal breaks are a natural noise that happen as a result of pressure on our vocal cords, but in Western classical singing traditions, we're usually taught to avoid vocal breaks and to smooth out our voices as we move throughout our range. But learning how to purposefully use vocal breaks can be really useful, not only for hollering, but for other kinds of folk song traditions. So before I teach a few more hollers, I want to suggest a few simple exercises to help you figure out where the vocal breaks happen in your range. Each person's voice breaks in a different part of their range, but as you figure out where your vocal break occurs, you can purposefully incorporate it into songs and hollers. One exercise is to simply move up and down in your range without trying to sing smoothly. Let all of the pressure just rest on your vocal cords. Hear those breaks happening? Another exercise that can work is basically making a donkey noise. Hey-aw. You can also try reversing it. Ah-hey. Moving between those high and low notes can help you find a vocal break. All right, let's finish by learning another kind of functional holler, hollering for cows. I talk about this in my companion video, but it's important to understand that there weren't standard calls for certain types of animals in Sampson County. In other words, there wasn't one kind of call for sheep or one kind of call for cows. Just like when we call to our pets, animals learn to respond to specific calls from their owners and could differentiate those calls from the calls for other kinds of animals on the farm. So here's a holler that Leonard Emanuel would use to call to his cow, who presumably was named Chloe. Chloe, 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 Chloe. Try that with me. Chloe, 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 Chloe. And here's a cow holler from Sampson County resident H.H. Oliver. This might be one of my favorite hollers. Woy, woy, woy. Try that with me. Woy, woy, woy. Now that you've tried out some hollers from Sampson County, I hope you feel excited to make up your own hollers and use them with family and friends. This ancient form of communication is so flexible and still so useful, so please, holler away.